Hi, and welcome to the ADHD Dopamine Collective. I'm Rhonda Essling, licensed therapist, late-in-life diagnosed ADHDer, and mom, struggling to figure it out right alongside you. This is a space for women who get it, the struggles, the wins, and everything in between. Let's get into it. Brett Welch is the founder of Sensitivity is Strength Coaching. She's a licensed therapist, parent coach, and mom to two deeply feeling, spirited daughters whose nervous systems run hot. She knows firsthand how hard it can be to parent when traditional methods fall short. For over 20 years, she has worked as a school counselor and child therapist, specializing in highly sensitive and neurodivergent kids, particularly with PDA profiles. Her mission is to support parents who feel stuck in patterns of conflict, meltdowns, and exhaustion, and find a light at the end of the tunnel. Her coaching philosophy is simple. No parent or child is broken. Repair is always possible, and regulation and connection are the foundations for growth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rhonda. I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor.
Yes, I'm so excited. I know you yourself describe yourself as a highly sensitive person.
I do.
How did that shape how you ended up sort of making your career, like the direction that things went for you career-wise?
Yeah, I have known I wanted to be a therapist or a counselor since I was 10. And I definitely think high sensitivity has a lot to do with that. It's a challenging way to experience the world in a world sort of not built for highly sensitive people. It's about 30% of the population are highly sensitive. And really what that means is that you take on a lot. Other people's energy affects you deeply. You get overwhelmed easily. We tend to have labels like shy or overly sensitive or too much, or they can't handle a lot. But really it's because that energy is overwhelming and we feel that so deeply. That's that highly sensitive person. So I chose a career that was perfect for a highly sensitive person. I have to intuit other people's emotions and help hold space. And I've absolutely had to develop some distance or some boundaries with that. And that's been life work as well. I think I chose a career that provided the opportunity for me to develop that and to get better at that because I have to avoid burnout. But helping people has always been my jam. It's what I love to do.
Yeah, I love that you named that because I do think that that's one of the trickiest parts of highly sensitive people is the boundary setting.
Mm.
It's just so easy to take on the emotions of the people around you and feel responsible for it. And I'm also fascinated by your career as a school counselor. And I have to tell you, I am. It's such an interesting background for a therapist to also have that, working with kids and parents and admin. Like you have a very interesting perspective, I think, on how systems as a whole sort of operate there. But I'm wondering, when you were in the school as a counselor, what kept showing up for you with the kids, especially neurodivergent kids, that you felt really drawn to or you just felt like the system wasn't able to handle?
Yeah.
I know that's two different questions. So
No, it's related though. The word that keeps coming to me is misunderstood, that they were just misunderstood. Even with diagnostic labels, that doesn't really help, right? It's just a way to explain behavior or give a name for behavior. But appreciating that really doesn't help a teacher in the classroom who's struggling with a child who is quote unquote acting out. I'm a big believer in behavior is communication 100% of the time. There are no exceptions. So helping teachers to appreciate that and understand that and get to what's the underlying need here that's not being met for each kid. And as a school counselor, I saw so much of that. And then kids getting frustrated, teachers getting really frustrated, other kids getting frustrated because following the rules was hard or the attention was hard or the same kid's name keeps getting called out over and over and over again. Nobody feels good when that happens. And there are ways to shift that dynamic, but it's really hard to do that in a classroom of 30 kids. Especially when multiple kids have that dynamic.
I was going to say capacity is such a huge issue when it comes to seeing a broken system, but also being able to recognize the limitations of what's possible. What was that like as a counselor in that setting to be able to see the picture, the bigger picture, be able to see the need that wasn't being met or the situation that could have been handled in a different way, while also knowing that there's really just not much capacity to do something different?
Yeah, talk about frustrating. Like, that is
I bet.
frustrating, right? That's so frustrating, and I'd love to say I always saw that, but I don't think I started out seeing that. I think I started out my career as much more of a behaviorist and behavior charts and, "Oh, we just have to address the behavior and change that, and then things will get better," instead of really looking at the underlying needs. That came later. That came as I understood more, learned more. Becoming a parent was huge, from that perspective. So I'm trying to go back, exactly to your question, but frustrating is the word. But I'm always careful about, like, the system is broken or this is broken. I think that's a tricky thing to say too, because teachers, the overwhelming majority, are just the most amazing and wonderful people and hold so much space all day long for all these little people and care so incredibly deeply about them. And they don't have the tools they need or the time they need or the number of kids that they need to really be able to have the impact that they could if they were able to have those resources. Our
Yeah,
classrooms are too big and too much going
100%.
on. Too much.
Every teacher that I have worked with in therapy, have known in my personal life, are some of the most creative and dedicated people I have ever met. Like,
Yeah.
they endure a lot
Yes.
for not much and continue to show up for these kids. And also, they don't have what they need to be
Absolutely
able
not.
to do the jobs they want, right? Like, kind of in the same way as a counselor, you probably didn't have the resources you needed. Yeah, it can be such a big burnout role to be working in a system that you can see how it can change, how it can be different, but there aren't resources or abilities to do that.
Oh, and what the onus is put on, and appropriately, the onus is put on education. At the same time, there's
Mhm.
so many barriers around that, and if we had more, I love the phrase qualified boots on the ground, because that's really what it's about. Not just boots on the ground, but qualified boots on the ground to address the issues, it would really help. In my caseloads as a school counselor tended to be 1 to 500, 1 to 550, 1 to, those sort of were my caseloads. In the ideal number, and honestly, this is just a little more random than it should be. There's not a whole lot of research behind it, but the ideal caseload for the American School Counselor Association is 1 to 250. But any therapist that hears that is like, "That's insane. What do you mean, like, one
Yeah.
person to 250 kids? How's that ever possible?" And they don't all need you at the same level, right? It's a lot more tier one intervention of classroom lessons and, cell, like social emotional learning and that kind of thing. But the needs are high. I always worked in Title I schools where the needs are higher. They're my favorite people. Kids are the best people. I adore them and love them. But it was a really intense job, and talk about burnout. I think anybody working in those schools and kids in those schools, not blaming kids, there's a lot of intensity there and a lot of need.
So I know you also, and I didn't know this before I got your bio, you also have two little Spitfires at home. I also have two little girls that
I
are
know.
spicy as hell
Yeah.
and love it. They keep it interesting and fun and not boring.
Never boring. Never boring. And we are now in the teenage years with my
Are you?
oldest, and that is a whole other ball game. And
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
We're just
highly
entering middle
sensitive little
school.
people.
Yeah,
Yes.
middle
Okay.
school with my oldest. So I'm so afraid.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. It's hard years. It is. There's no getting around it. It's hard years.
So it's interesting to me. What's it like for you now to be on the other side of those systems, right? Where you're now a parent, you're no longer in the schools on a day to day basis. What's that like for you, having kind of seen both sides of it?
Yeah. I have a bit of a different trajectory there, and we're lucky to be able to have it. But my husband and I both worked in public education. He worked as a high school teacher for 10 years, and I worked as a school counselor for a really long time. I won't even get into how long. It will age me. But we decided to send our girls to private school. The classrooms are 14 kids max in each classroom. It makes a huge, huge difference. It's a smaller environment for highly sensitive kids, and We are lucky and able to do that, and everyone isn't, which I understand. But we looked at our experiences and what we had and the schools where we feed to, and we just knew if we could make it work, that wasn't going to be an environment that we would put them in.
No, that makes total sense to me. We are also in the same boat. We were in the public school system, and my oldest is twice exceptional, and she's super okay with me talking about it. We've had this conversation.
It's a superpower. I love it.
Well, she loves that I'm helping other people learn about their brains and nervous system because it's so important to her. And so anyway, she was so high functioning that we couldn't get any resources for her. And when she would get home, it would be really hard, really, really hard. And I just couldn't advocate for her in that system because there weren't any resources. And it wasn't anyone's fault. Like, her teachers cared about her so much.
They're not showing educational need. There has to be educational
No,
impact.
exactly.
And I talk to a lot of my families about that. It's so hard. And I know they're working so hard at home, but when the kiddo has A's and B's and they do well at school, it's not showing educational impact. What goes on at home can't be addressed in school in terms of resources that are allocated through data.
Yeah. Well, and when we had her assessment done, even the psychiatrist, I think, who did her assessment, made the comment that with these kids, it's more about lost potential than it is about like
100%.
how they show up in class every day.
And exceptional ed and IEPs do not
No.
evaluate for lost potential. That's not what they're looking at.
No, because eventually they're going to hit that ceiling, right?
Yep,
of functioning,
they sure will.
where their nervous systems, the demands are just too much, and they're really going to struggle and not understand why, right? Like, these kids just fall through the cracks.
They don't. And those are the families that I tend to work with.
Yeah.
That come to me for coaching and for therapy for the kids. Yeah.
I was going to say, that's what it sounded like when I was going through your information. I was like, I feel like you work with these families, and it's so hard because there really isn't much information out there. And, obviously we're really gaslit by a lot of different systems when it comes to
100%.
like, your kid's just smart, your kid's just socially awkward, like whatever it might be.
We don't see that. I don't know what you mean. We don't see that at school. No, because they're masking. Of course you don't. Of course you don't see that. I see that at home.
Every time it would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Who is that? That's not the child I see. And it isn't. And it isn't.
It's not.
No.
And so the school that she's in now it's smaller classes. And project-based learning. It's like it's built for neurodivergent kids. Right? They have PE every single day. They have other specials every single day. They are outside as much as they can be. Even in middle school, they get recess time, lots of movement. Like, I remember visiting, and one of the classrooms had a like mini trampoline in it, and the kid was on the mini trampoline, and the other ones were like shaving cream, doing their letters on the tables. And
awesome.
I was like, these are our people.
Yeah, that's it.
And
we found it. Yep.
We found it. And it breaks my heart that this isn't available to everyone.
I know. And that just to mass produce that is so challenging when you have
and it's
districts that have to fit all these kids in, and it doesn't work.
No, because it's very child-centered. You can't just mass produce it. It doesn't work very well. So anyway, I hear you, and I really resonated with the work you're doing, and I was really interested in your time in the schools, because that's having both sides of that equation is not super common. And so I think that's really helpful now, being a parent of a highly sensitive kid and seeing like the real impact.
Absolutely. I didn't know how valuable it would be. I'm so grateful for all of my years in school, not just because it was wonderful to work there. And I just value school counselors so highly and the work they do. They're really undervalued in terms of their training and what they're able to do. And they're often used as substitutes or lunch monitors or other things. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs, but school counselors are mental health professionals. So that's my soapbox for a minute. It's very frustrating to see them misused and misallocated. But being there and then having this perspective to be able to bring to families to say, no, this is the difference between a 504 and an IEP. No, this is why they're not qualifying. No, these are accommodations and modifications you can ask for. Like, this is what a suspected disability means. So just having that experience of like, no, they are able to do that. That is something that they can do. No, they're not allowed to say they don't have the staff to make that happen. That's illegal. They have to find a way or consider another placement. So all of those things are very helpful in working with families to be able to help them advocate for themselves.
Well, and the reality is what happens at school, what happens in other environments in these kids' lives directly impacts the functioning at home.
It's
And
accumulation of stress, right? The stress
100%.
accumulates over the day. Yes.
And that was something early on in our like trying to figure out what was going on in our home. That was really hard. It's like the damage had already been done by the time she walked in the door. And it was like we didn't even know what to do, right? Like
Yep.
she was already a mess.
Yep.
It's just riding the wave of dysregulation at that point.
Absolutely.
So what's
Right?
it like for you when parents come in? Because I'm sure I'm not alone, and
Oh
sort of
gosh, no.
describe this situation where it's like, I honestly don't know what to do. They already come home a mess.
Yeah. The first and most important thing to do is to validate it and to say, you're not making it up. It's not your fault. You're not wrong. You're not creating this problem. Your kid's not crazy. It's none of those things. The first thing I do is to explain the nervous system. I pull up a polyvagal chart. We talk about the three states of the nervous system and what being stuck in sympathetic or fight or flight looks like. And just having that understanding of what accumulation of stress does over the day, over the week, over the month, over the school year, the impact that that has in getting towards burnout. And what does burnout look like? And what are the symptoms of that? And then assessing, where are we? Is this sustainable in the current environment that they're in? And with a lot of the families that I work with, the answer ends up being no, it's not. They wouldn't be coming to me when it's just starting. They're not coming to me when they're middle. They're coming to me when it's at crisis level, like DEFCON 5, kind of level. So then we really have to talk about what are your options? What can you do? And it's not easy to say, but it's easier to say, I just can't do that. They have to stay where they are. At what cost? At what
Right.
cost to you is it to stay where they are? Is that really true? Or do you have another choice? We always have choices, right? But they could be really hard choices.
What is that like for you, again, as someone who has worked in the public school system, to look at these parents and say, can you keep doing this? Or is it a non negotiable that you're going to have to figure something else out?
I mean, I'm a straight shooter. I don't tend to pull any punches. I do gently challenge people, I would say, to say the story that you're telling yourself right now, is this really true? And using that at what cost to your kid is to stay where you are right now. You're telling yourself, we both have to work full time. Maybe you do. I don't know. Let's really talk about it. Do you both have to work full time? Is there something else you can do? Is homeschool an option, even if you don't want to do it? I get it. Even if you're someone who says, I can't homeschool my kid. Okay, well, if you don't, and there's not another school, have you looked around at other schools? There's applying for financial aid. Like there's other things here that are possibilities that we can explore. I'm not saying I know which is right for you. There's no way for me to know that. And I certainly want to have cultural sensitivity around that, not an elitist value. Maybe you both really do need to work full time and there isn't other support. If that's the case, that's where we are. And I'm going to meet you where you are. But also let's challenge that notion to make sure that's really true and not just a story you're telling yourself. Because this isn't working for your kid. If it was, you wouldn't be here.
Right. What is it like for you when you hear pushback? And this is coming from pushback I got from other people when I pulled my kid,
Mm.
which is, well, they're going to have to figure it out sometime. They're going to have to figure out how to do things this way sometime. Like they're going to have to figure out how to navigate the bullies, and they're going to have to figure out how to, emotionally regulate through their day. Are you helping them, or are you just enabling behavior?
I would say, not your kid, not your problem. You don't know, you don't
Yeah.
know the ins and
No,
outs of my
100%.
kid, right? If you'd like to come into my house and take care of my kid and do all the things, then you can have an opinion about that. But, I was like, other people's opinions are none of my business. That's
Yeah.
one thing, because they don't understand. There's another phrase about opinions that I won't share here, but everyone knows what it is. Everyone knows that other phrase, right? Everybody knows what that is. Yeah. So, they don't have a leg to stand on. But then the other piece I say to people is, but there are things that are developmentally appropriate at different times. Are you talking to your 5-year-old about gritty sex stuff? You're not. No, wildly inappropriate, right? Are you talking to, I don't know, your 7-year-old about marital problems? I really hope you're not, because that is not appropriate to share with them. So what they learn to tolerate, to manage, to hold, to be able to work with at different ages is really important. And I think that's a gaslighting kind of comment of like, well, they have to learn sometime, so why not now? Because we don't throw our kids into a pool if they don't know how to swim. They'll drown, right? I mean, some parents do. I have a lot to say about that too. It's not how you teach things. It's not how you support someone's nervous system. And
well,
if you have
not with these kids. Especially not with these kids. They literally can't.
They literally can't. It's not a won't do, it's a can't do. That's different. If they would, they could.
Right.
And if you have an ADHDer and some other types of neurodivergence as well, go back 2 to 3 years developmentally, and that's where they are in terms of emotional regulation.
100%.
Emotional regulation, 2 to 3 years behind.
And social stuff.
And social stuff. Right.
And I do feel like oftentimes these deeply feeling kids, they're easy targets, and they often become the targets of bullies and mean kids. I remember first grade, I got a call from a teacher that like my kid was the target of the mean girl stuff, and she didn't get it. Like it went so far over her head, like, and also they don't remember, like, out of sight, out of mind. So she wasn't coming home and talking to me about it, but also it was affecting her. And, the flip side of that, and one of my arguments is often like, if I'm in a toxic work environment and the boss isn't going to make a change around the people creating that toxic work environment, I'm going to leave. Absolutely. I have the autonomy to leave that work environment.
That's right. And your
go
kid can't
find
leave.
A different job. My kid doesn't have a choice.
They can't leave without you pulling them.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's
I wouldn't expend my time and energy trying to figure out how to navigate that work environment. I would just leave because the values don't align with mine.
100%. And when you're telling somebody else you're pulling your kid, that might be the first time they're hearing about it. You've been dealing with this for years.
Yeah.
It's not a one-shot deal.
And I also want to make it very clear, because I know this is complicated conversation. And what state are you in, Brett? I forget.
Virginia.
Okay, so I'm in Iowa, and there's a lot of politics around this. And so I just want to make it clear that the decision that I made to pull my kid wasn't because I was anti-public school. It's because our public schools are no longer the first in the nation because they've been chronically underfunded, understaffed, and under-resourced. And because of that, they don't have the capacity to meet every kid where they are.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They should be able to, right? This is a school environment that should be available in the public system, especially for deeply feeling and neurodivergent kids who need a different learning environment. It's just the nature of where our public schools in my state are not capable of doing that.
And we just
I just wanted to clarify. Right? Yeah.
I'm glad you did. And, also a lot of this school decision and looking at different schools, it's not always about the academics. Like the district where we are has fantastic academics. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about the actual learning. It was about the environment, the overwhelm, the going into a classroom of 25 to 27 kindergartners. I mean, my kid would have melted in that environment. And I know my kid. And so I really advocated and looked at other places and used some of those tools. And part of that is working with parents to access those other systems and navigating the other systems. That's another important point of advocacy.
100%. Well, and I didn't even know the school existed until we started. Well, we weren't even really looking. It was like a summer school thing. And I started following them on socials, and I'm like, this is like a neurodivergent school.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
So I want to kind of switch gears, if that's okay.
Sure.
And talk some more about this behavior is communication 100% of the time idea. Because this was a transition for me personally that was really hard. Because there is that like lens we were raised with that talking back is disrespectful. Anything that is out of line with your expectation of your child is seen as disrespect. And so this transition to behavior is just communication. It's still a challenge for me sometimes when emotions are really high, right? Yes. All around.
Because it's still like, real. How dare you? How dare you? It's still fair.
When do I get my respect? No.
Percent. Have you lost your mind? Who do you think you're talking to? Yeah, that's all in here, and it's all okay. It's all okay.
So my kids are being raised with different understandings of their brain. Literally, I walked into my
Yes.
daughter's room one time and I looked at her. I was like, what are you doing? Like, in what world? And she goes, I don't know, Mom. It's giving me dopamine. And I was like, it is. It is. And also, maybe not the safest choice you've
Maybe
ever
not like
made.
this, right? One of
But
the
she
most,
did.
one of the worst, I will say worst, one of the worst phrases we say as parents is, what were you thinking? Especially when something just happened, because the answer is they weren't.
No.
They're not thinking, they're just doing, right?
Yep. It just felt good at the time.
Yeah, it felt good at the time. And those kind of disrespect or the backtalk, like, what are you thinking? They're not. They're not thinking, because thinking happens here in the frontal lobe, which is not fully developed until age 27. And the doing happens back here in the limbic brain. And when we feel that fight or flight reaction, when we feel upset, when we feel attacked, particularly with the demand avoidant, a lot of the demand avoidant kids that I work with, our lid flips. So all of that frontal lobe stuff, it's gone. It's not accessible. So the respect, the communication, the learning, the planning, organization, calming, difficult, especially for our neurodivergent babies. Yes, of course it is. It's gone. It has flown. It's gone. And we need to bring regulation back in to have it come back on so that we can be in a thinking state instead of just a doing state.
Yeah. And one of those pieces, especially as a neurodivergent parent to neurodivergent kids, is that regulating is really hard for me.
Really hard. Absolutely.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And I know, you and I were talking one day and you had some really actionable ways for a parent to sort of respond in that situation, not to the behavior, but to what the kid was doing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the number one, and it is hard because it is the most challenging too. The number one thing we always need to focus on when our kid is, I will say, acting a fool, whatever they're doing, they're acting a fool, is to first regulate ourselves. And that is small movements, small thought shifts, things that we can do. And of course, breathing is a favorite of everyone. But if you're really activated, you can't access that breath, right? So we need to use our senses, get our senses involved first before we do the breathing. So it can be something as simple as taking your fingertips and just feeling the ridges on your fingertips. Just feel it for 5 seconds. You don't need to do this for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 seconds. And then you can take and feel your palms, feel every nerve ending, feel every bit of your palm as you go down. And just focus on how it feels and the lines in your palm. This is getting you grounded and back into your body. Then take that deep breath. Because breathing is helpful, but not until we're grounded.
I was going to say, tell me more about why breathing isn't helpful until you're grounded first.
I won't say it's not helpful. I shouldn't say that. It's hard to access. Really is what I mean, is that it's hard to access. It's hard, you're in the state and you're going, that's not going to help you at all. It's not going to be effective. You're just angry breathing, right? I'm breathing. Like, well, true and unhelpful.
Yes. Well, and what I also love about the grounding exercises that you used is how sensory they are. And one of the things that we're learning, especially about women with ADHD, is that they actually have higher rates of sensitivities around sensory, auditory processing, and tactile touch, particularly in these dysregulating situations. If you have a kid melting down, there's a lot of sensory dysregulation that's happening as well. The screaming, maybe they're physically pushing you, or you're trying to hug them and they're fighting you. It can, again, even more activate that system really quickly.
Yes.
And so checking in with the sensory overwhelm in that way, even when you were doing the light touch, I was like, I don't like that. So I did it harder.
Perfect.
I needed a little more deep pressure.
Great.
So, but it's giving you just a moment to check in with your sensory system.
100%. And one of the things I always like to do with parent clients that I work with in coaching is to get their sensory profile in the beginning. I want to know what your low thresholds are, what your high thresholds are, because each sense has its own threshold. And it's not just the 5 taste, touch, smell, hear, see. It's also proprioceptive sense, your vestibular sense, your interoception, all those yummy, wonderful senses. So it's
All those
important to know.
what's
Yeah.
going on in your body? I don't
What's
know.
going on? I don't know. I have low interoception. I have no idea, right? So knowing that
How are the meds working? I don't know.
I'm here. I mean, I don't really know.
I'm here.
But
I'm like, I'm doing things.
I made it.
So
good.
can we have benchmarks that say how I'm doing there?
Exactly. Right. So thank you for sharing that. I love that like the light touch didn't feel good for you. You needed more deep pressure in that. And I think learning our own sensory profiles are so important. I have a very low auditory threshold. So that's why I think I was overstimulated all the time when the girls were babies, because the crying was extremely overstimulating for me. Loop earplugs have just changed my life, and they're not the only brand out there. I'm not like a brand spokesman or anything, but I just love them just to dampen the noise. And I can choose, like, I have an event I'm going to with my husband tonight. You better believe I'll be wearing them because it's overstimulating. And then I get very irritable and upset, and I don't want to be there. And that's not fun because I want to go have fun. Wear a fancy dress, be all fancy, have a good time.
No,
So
I love that
yeah.
you named that, because I think, and this is something I just spoke to in a recent podcast I recorded about the sensory overwhelm. And oftentimes I'll get new moms in my office who feel a lot of shame for how dysregulating their baby's crying is, or how dysregulating it is to sit in a chair and breastfeed. Like the
Yeah.
sensory, and also same touch, sound,
Yeah.
two of my biggest sensitivities, and I have no introspection. Like, obviously, I just shared that. I can't check in with my body. But as a new mom, that was a sensory nightmare with
It sure was.
colicky, preemie babies
Sure.
who had to be held all the time, at the same time feeling trapped.
Yep. Had my first panic attack during that time. It was brutal. So I just so resonate with
remember,
what you're saying. So much so.
yes. And
So
I
much
get
so.
so many women in my office who just feel so much shame about that,
Yes.
and about like feeling like a bad mom.
Yeah. Because what do
'cause
people
their
say?
kids,
Oh, how wonderful. Oh, you have a baby. Isn't it the greatest joy you've ever had? And I'm like, no, it's
yeah.
awful. It was
Well,
awful.
and I had a
first.
woman in my life, at one point, an older, generationally older woman in my life who had made a comment like, if you can't handle noise, you shouldn't be a mom. And like, I just
So, yes.
remember that just stayed with me. And also, this is someone who raised 4 boys, right? Like, she's a
Different level,
stay-at-home
too.
mom.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Maybe that's what she had to tell herself to push through those days. Maybe
it
she
is,
didn't
right?
have auditory sensitivity like I do, and so really, and generationally. But
Maybe she had a high
even
threshold. Didn't bother
right,
her.
even in those moments, that would come up for me. Like, maybe I shouldn't be a mom because I can't handle the
Well,
noise.
yeah. I'm supposed to be good at this. I was supposed to be
Right.
great at this. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I like, why is this so hard for me? It doesn't seem hard for other people. All the things.
Yeah.
I'd have people say,
Yeah.
if you just tried harder with the breastfeeding, there's so much there. And it's
There's
so
so
hard
much.
anyway. So it's just parenting is hard, right? It's different kinds of hard at different times. And
Well, and it's especially hard when you don't know these things about yourself, and
absolutely.
when you don't know these things about your child. And so I think that's why these conversations are so important as well.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know. And I don't know, circling back to what we were talking about, kind of a kid in meltdown and trying to regulate them, and you say you're in sensory overwhelm and the small interactions aren't working. Is it okay to take a break? Is it okay to tag your partner in?
Oh my gosh, yes. Not only okay, it's necessary to be able to do
Yeah.
that. And I always really encourage parents. I talk a lot about this in the parent group that I run. It's called my Regulate, Relate, and Repair group. I always say, not only take a break, but take the pressure off of yourself that you have to fix this meltdown, or even that you created this meltdown. Whatever happened was just probably the straw that broke the camel's back. It's always about accumulated stress. So I'll have parents say, like, they could do it fine today, yesterday, why can't they do it fine today? because they were more regulated yesterday when you asked them to do that, or when they had to tie the shoe, or when they had to come to dinner, or whatever it may be. It's not your fault, and it's also not solely your job to fix it. It is your job to hold the space in a loving way. But if you need to pop your earplugs in, take a break, tap out your partner, go into the bathroom, I would say, isolating kids is not a great idea. I have come across a few kids that really do want to be isolated and that feels good to their nervous systems. Fine. Know your kid, follow your kid. But for the most part, they need co-regulation and they don't want that. Just being in the room as a loving presence, even if your hands are over your ears and they hate that, they're also seeing you do what you need to do for yourself. And you have that conversation later of, I didn't want to leave you. I love you so much. I hear that that was hard for you, but also I was taking care of me in that moment so that I could stay in the room.
How powerful for them to see that too.
You taking care of yourself and doing your self-regulating is one of the most powerful tools you have in teaching them to self-regulate. Nervous systems talk no matter what, so your regulated nervous system will teach theirs to regulate. And that's the biggest thing I say to parents and to people who are like, well, they have to learn it sometime and we're just supporting them, being dysregulated. No, your regulated nervous system will teach their nervous system to regulate, and them watching you regulate gives them the tools to know how to explore regulating themselves.
I feel like that's a game changer. It was for me when I really started learning about her system and mine. And I think we're 4 for 4 neurospicy in my house. So we got lots of flavors going on. But when it came to those situations, she's one that she'll shut herself in her closet when she's beyond, right? When we're just riding the wave. But taking that pressure off of myself. And then another piece that I needed was to feel like I was doing something. And so I would start getting her a bottle of water and a snack and her stuffy and her blankie. And I would just set them outside the door to her closet. And I would just let her know, hey, these are out here if and when you need them. I'm not coming in. I'm going to come sit over here. But that also gave me a focus, something tangible that I could do to kind of get myself out of the power struggle or the dysregulation around trying to fix it, or this wasn't going to fix it. But eventually she'd get to the point where that would start comforting her, right? In the moment, nothing's going to help. You kind of have to let them go.
And if you handed that to her in the moment, she'd probably throw the water bottle at you, right? It's also because it was outside of the door and she had the autonomy to get it or not, whatever she was going to do, but you were taking care of her. That's so powerful that you offered that. Even in this moment of dysregulation, because kids often feel a lot of shame and guilt afterwards, after meltdowns, I am taking care of you and I'm showing you love.
And also, I know you don't want to snuggle right now, but I'm here if and when you're ready for whatever you need.
I'm respecting your physical boundary too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think girls need to know that their physical boundaries should always be respected, especially boys too, but especially girls. And you're literally teaching her that. Yeah. Yeah. You're like, that's not a problem.
Mine
Got that on lock. Got that on lock. Good to go. Good. The other thing I tell parents in that moment is, if you ever read The Invisible String, I love that book, but I love that book. Imagining a string from your heart to their heart when they're in those moments is a very visceral and powerful way to share your energy and your regulated nervous system. Just projecting that energy to them. I've seen physical changes in my little one when I shift from being annoyed to doing that. Because I'm sure not a perfect parent over here. I work with parents on this all the time. But in those moments, do I get dysregulated too? Of course. I'm a human being. Of course I do. Yeah. But I know it's my job to shift, to come into connection. I can still feel all my feelings. Connection is not always calm. Connection can also be frustration, and that's okay. But I'm going to share my love with her because I love those people no matter what they do, even if they're driving me crazy.
That's right. I wouldn't trade them in for any other kids.
I can
tell you that. Okay. So I also wanted to kind of bring this back a little bit from, even before we get to meltdown, right? We're talking about, this is a situation where oftentimes the kids come home already in meltdown. But say it's a stay-at-home day. That's what we call it in my house. It's a stay-at-home day. You talk about being a dysregulation detective.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that means and what we're looking for?
Sure. So this is part of the group 2 that I run and the course that I have. The module 2 is about being a dysregulation detective. And all that means is that we're looking for the unmet need underneath the behavior. Behavior is communication 100% of the time. What is the need underneath the behavior that's not being met? And to your point about interoception, usually kids don't know what the need is. They don't know. So it's our job as parents to try to figure it out. And I do emphasize try because we can't always know too. But even when they were toddlers, you're looking at them and they're like in a full meltdown. It's 7:30 at night and you're like, you're exhausted. You're overtired. We do know as parents more often than we think we know. Or we look at them and we're like, wait a minute, when was the last time you ate? Like, it's been hours. Okay, this is what we're doing. Dinner's running a little late and you're starting to lose your mind. You're hungry. So we do know more often than not. And I have an acronym I use. It's HOTTTS. So HOTS, because our nervous system runs hot. And that's hunger, overstimulation, thirst, temperature, tired, sick. Those are the big 6 of why dysregulation happens. What's the need underneath the behavior? Overstimulation is the trickiest because we don't always know what's caused it or that they're there, but it's also usually the most common.
That makes total sense to me. And it's really interesting because as we were talking about interoception and folks with ADHD or who are neurodivergent really can struggle with that. This is something I teach women too, who are neurodivergent. When you are starting to feel dysregulated, checking in on those things that happen in your body, right? Like, are you hungry? Are you tired? Did you forget to take your meds? Do you need to drink water? Do you need fresh air?
Yes.
What is the underlying need that's not being met? Are you overstimulated? Do you need to change your sensory environment?
Right.
Or do you need a sensory break?
Yeah.
All kinds of
Overstimulation.
things.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it does become one of those things that there's a lot of overlap here. As you're teaching your kids, you could be learning yourself. As you're learning yourself, you could start seeing it in your kids. I feel like this is a really common piece of like how we are learning right alongside our kids.
Most
'Cause
of the
we
time
weren't
with
taught
parents
this.
going through, no, certainly not. You are not. How are you supposed to know? Like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Most of the parents who go through coaching with me, if they don't already know that at least one person in the couple is neurodivergent, they figure it out by the end of our coaching time
100%.
together. Because what's the statistic? Like 95% of neurodivergent. And I'm like, it's 100. There's just 5%
It's
that
100.
haven't figured it
You
out yet.
just don't
It's
know
100%.
yet.
It's 100%. It's okay. It's not bad. I think there's shame
No.
around that too. And it's just not. I mean, there's also the whole thinking of like, what even is neurotypical? Is that a thing?
Well,
Not really.
my daughter thinks neurotypical people are boring, and I kind of agree.
And there you go. There's no spice. Where's the spice to life, right?
Okay, let's talk about some of the PDA profile kiddos and parents, because that's not just a kid thing.
No, that's a life thing.
That's a life thing.
It is.
Can you explain for those who are listening what PDA means? Because I still have a lot of clients when I talk about it who don't know what it is.
No, because it's not a diagnosis. It's a neurotype. And it's really not well known, especially in the States. It's far more, of course, as usual, being researched in Europe, overseas, more understanding about that. So PDA, technically it stands for pathological demand avoidance. So avoiding demands, the demands tax the nervous system, any kind of demand. And we can talk more about that too. But it creates demand avoidance because the body feels unsafe, like literally threat to life with any kind of demand placed on the body if dysregulation is present. If the person's regulated, it usually feels okay. A lot of people, though, understandably, do not like the word pathological because we're pathologizing a neurotype and it makes it sound bad. And it isn't. It's just a way that we're wired and a way that demands are perceived. There's some other shifts to that. Pervasive demand avoidance is another one. Pervasive drive for autonomy is another. So there are other ways that people have characterized PDA that personally I like better. But the, I guess, clinical term, if you're going to say that, use that, is pathological demand avoidance. So,
I was going to ask you if this can show up on a spectrum, but it sounds like this can very much be impacted by regulation.
yes. But also the answer is yes, it does show up on a spectrum. Absolutely, it does. I've seen really extreme and then not so much. Like, it really takes quite a bit of dysregulation for it to pop up. And if you think about it, a lot of us do have some demand avoidance when we are in that irritated kind of fight or flight state because the demand doesn't feel possible. And what underlies PDA is anxiety, not manipulation, I don't know, cruelty, any of that. Not disrespect. Anxiety is what underlies it. I'm not going to be able to make this demand. I can't do this, so I'm shutting down and I won't do it. To preserve my safety, to preserve myself. I can only do what I can do, so I will not do your demand. There are 4 to 5 main things that characterize PDA, and I will say I am not a wild expert on PDA. I don't pretend to be. People like Casey Elrich and others, and Amanda Dykman and others in the PDA community are the experts. So, I will always defer to them. But the big things in PDA is a drive for autonomy. So really, I got to do it myself. I got to come up with the idea for it myself. I want to be autonomous and do things my way. Equalizing. Really struggling with feeling like someone is above you or in a position of authority. You want to feel on the same playing field or a bit above them. And there are all kinds of ways that we can achieve that with our kids, even physically, to get below them, to bring the threat level down. A high need for co-regulation is one. So that sharing of a nervous system, because this is a nervous system disorder. That's what PDA is, nervous system disorder. A high drive for novelty, which I'm sure you're hearing a lot of it, like ADHD, ADHD, ADHD. Yes.
I mean, it's a neurotype under the neurodivergent sort of wing for the most part. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those are the main pieces of PDA. And then this, big reaction when demand, this avoidance of demands. But what's so hard about the demand is that it's not just things that people tell us to do, like go put your shoes on, go put your coat on, don't do that. It's also things like personal grooming, daily routines, things that we start and then they become demands. Even a special interest can become a demand. That's hard. That's really challenging.
Yeah, that's the piece. I even had a conversation about that this week with a client and trying to explain to them how this isn't just external demands. Internal demands that you put on yourself can become anxiety provoking in the same way.
And even instinctual, going to the bathroom can be a demand. And that's a tough one. A lot of my PDA kids have encapricis and enuresis issues.
Okay. Working with the parents of these kids, because I'm often struck when I hear professionals talk about PDA kids and parenting PDA kids. I mean, the advice for these parents is so vastly different than anything we grew up with. And when I hear it, I often wonder how this doesn't become permissive parenting, right? If every demand is met with, but what I hear you saying, and I'm wondering about what's going on for me is it not, the parenting isn't about how you're responding in the moment. It's about teaching regulation. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I'd say all of the above. It starts with being a dysregulation detective. So knowing what's the need underneath, what's happening, that is going to impact how you react as a parent and how you parent. If your child is in burnout, you're potentially going to parent very differently than you might if they're not, and they have more regulation kind of built up. That accumulated stress is not just constantly high all the time. But it is, we vilify permissive parenting, and I understand, and the gentle parenting has gotten so vilified. And there's a time and a place. It depends on your kid's neurotype and what they need and the level of dysregulation. I think the biggest mindset shift is that they're not doing it to you. It's not manipulative. It's not trying to be cruel. These kids have huge empathic hearts. They're, wonderful connectors and kind when they're in regulated states. They're just dysregulated so often. And those little things, that stress accumulation can be so intense for them, and it builds up and it comes out as behaviors that seem cruel, mean, manipulative, disrespect, yelling shut up at you, yelling expletives, all kinds of things. And I heard Casey Elrich talk about this the other day, that one of the mindset shifts that has helped her is to say to herself, that's just data.
Mm.
In the moment, that is just data of where their nervous system is right now. Because it doesn't mean they think telling you to shut up is okay. They actually tend to have a very strong idea of right and wrong, and they would be very upset if they heard another kid do that, which is interesting.
Mm.
But when they're in that dysregulated state, that is what comes out because it is all about creating safety for themselves, that drive for autonomy and the threat response, right? So lid is totally flipped. They're back here and they are in that, their nervous system is in that kind of state to protect their sense of safety. And that's where they
Okay.
are in that moment.
So it sounds like, in addition, these are really deeply feeling kids. So is there a shame spiral sometimes that happens after these moments once they're regulated again? Is that kind of the difference? Is that these kids really are not acting out intentionally in these ways? They often feel bad about it afterwards. Like, what is the difference between, and I know, like, developmentally, a lot of these kids aren't even old enough to know really how to manipulate things, but for something that feels more intentional versus a result of dysregulation. And again, it's all dysregulation,
It's all
just
dysregulation,
different.
right?
Yeah.
And I would say any kid that gets to the point of being intentional, there's probably a lot of trauma behind that.
Hmm.
That's more therapy world, so I don't necessarily want to get into that. But kids are sort of born and innate pleasers to a degree. I mean, they seek that love from adults because they require adults to be safe
Right.
in their environments. So they're not wired to be obstinate or to be like refuse and have those demands trigger their threat systems. But PDA kids do. That is how they are wired, and that is how they come into the world. That's their neurotype. But their drive, like what they want, is connection and co-regulation. So back to the shame spiral, the answer is yes. They tend to have very intense shame spirals, and
I
then
bet.
those shame spirals sort of spiral out to be constant for them. And then they come to look at themselves as this is who I am. This is what I am. And then you start to see as they get older more of that quote unquote manipulation because it's like, well, this is who I am anyway. So you were talking about teaching your daughter about her brain and how she really supports you doing this work. I think that's some of the most important thing that we can do as a parent. If you have a kiddo with this sort of neurotype, teach them about their brains. This is how your brain is wired. This is called PDA. This is what's going on. I work with parents who are often worried about labels because a lot of them have gone through evaluations too. PDA always accompanies either ADHD or autism or both or an odd ADHD. That's even more common. And what I tell them is if you don't give your kid the label to understand what's going on in their brain, they will give themselves labels. Stupid, dumb, annoying, not lovable,
Bad.
like bad.
Yeah.
The labels will be there. So which labels are you choosing? Again, that's my directness. That's how I am with parents. But that is the truth. Don't hide labels from your kids because you're worried that they won't receive them well. They're going to need to process them. They're going to need time, potentially. They're going to need multiple conversations. There may be some initial shame, but the shame is so much worse if they don't understand how their brains are.
Well, and I hear this piece too about sort of radical acceptance of some pieces of this.
Yeah.
Is that Is that kind of the buffer to outside judgment or criticism? Because I have to imagine parenting these kids is like a recipe for so much judgment
Around it
and
is
shame
so
from
hard.
outside of your home
Yes.
about, like,
You're a bad parent. You let them
yeah,
do whatever. Yes,
yeah.
radical acceptance, really strong, tough skins, making sure as much as you can you have a partner or a family member or a community, a PDA family community. I'm big on encouraging parents to join like PDANA, some of the online communities. You need to be around people who get it, who don't judge you, who this is what they're living every day too, who understand. It's so important. Isolating yourself is one of the worst things you can do if you have a kiddo like this. And it's so easy to do also because a lot of times they have pulled them out. They're being homeschooled. There is a lot of truancy or school avoidance. It feels very, very isolating. So one of the big things I do is to connect parents with other parents who get it.
At the time they come to you, have they often already done a lot of isolating? I can imagine, like, even as toddlers, as young kids, like, taking, your kiddo out in public, expecting a meltdown or pushback or just, whatever might happen. these parents probably have already done that.
That's so common, right? Yeah,
Okay.
they're already isolated. I can't do the play dates. I can't, they hurt other kids because they get so overstimulated and so dysregulated. They're not mean kids. They're just getting their threat systems trigger, and those fight or flight system goes up and they lash out. The older they get, the more they can learn to control that a bit if we do the work with them and share our nervous systems and regulate with them and co-regulate and all the things.
Okay, so I want to make sure our listeners walk away with a feeling of validation and hope for the future.
Yes.
So what is something that you could share with them? Maybe one thing that you think a struggling parent, maybe a struggling neurodivergent mom who feels like she's drowning might need to hear today.
I would just say that it can get better. All is not lost. And it's also, you're not imagining it. Be so careful not to gaslight yourself. It's not your fault that your kids are this way, that you are this way, and this way is also a tricky kind of thing to say. But things can get better. Your household can achieve more connection and calming. But also there may be grief in that because you may have to let go of some of the things that you thought were going to be your tenets and that you'd have to have. I work with a lot of parents talking about like, but I need to have a schedule and predictability and whatever routine. Routine is the word I was looking for. Sometimes, and so much of the traditional parenting advice ends up gaslighting neurodivergent parents and particularly parents of
100%.
PDA kids because it just doesn't fit. That's okay. It's not your fault that it doesn't fit. You're not doing anything wrong. You're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and that's not what you need. So whether you coach with me or with someone else or, take a look at PDANA or other resources, Amanda Dykman stuff, Casey stuff, whatever it is, do something to support yourself because you don't have to be in this alone. It doesn't always have to be like this. And things really can shift if you're willing to make those mindset and behavioral shifts for yourself.
Yeah, and I want to tack on to that as a parent that's been there. Oftentimes, especially when we start talking about routines and consistency and predictability, as very ADHD mom, I suck at those things. And I would have a kid in occupational therapy and they'd be giving me all these homework assignments and I was like, girl,
I can't do that. Can't do
I'm
that.
sorry. Look at my week and tell you that likely is not going to happen. But I think also neurodivergent moms especially feel a lot of shame around struggling with that.
Yes.
And I just want you to know, just because you're not doing that in the way you're being told to do it, doesn't mean that's the reason it's not helping.
Absolutely.
It very well mean that your kid isn't going to respond to that either.
Right. Maybe it's not a good fit. And that's
Right.
okay. And if it's too hard, I think it's not a good fit for your family.
100%.
that's why-
If it's not working for you, then it doesn't matter.
Then it doesn't matter. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
I have this saying, like, if you've met one neurodivergent kid, then you've met one neurodivergent kid. And the same is true for a family. And that's why I think coaching is powerful and some of these interventions that are the one-on-one, because you have to find what works for you. This one size fits all is not going to work.
Yeah, for you and whatever menu of flavors of neurospice
Beautiful
you got going
spices
on in
that
your
you
house.
have happening. That's right. You got to find what works for you and stop blaming
You're gonna have-
yourself that something doesn't work just because it's not working for you and you think that it should, right? Like, stop shoulding all over yourself. Stop. It's not.
No, and the book that you're reading from is someone else's book. It doesn't work for you anyway.
Right? Yeah. It does not fit for you.
Yeah.
So,
well, is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up? Maybe where to find you or more resources that people can access?
Sure. Yeah. My website is sensitivityisstrengthcoach.com. And it's Brett Welch. If you Google me and Google Sensitivity is Strength Coaching, you can find me. I am starting a new parent group starting April 10th. So if you're interested in joining that, give me a shout. I'd be happy to email with you or hop on a discovery call or whatever would feel good for you. And I also do offer some individual coaching packages. There's a short wait list for that right now, but I'm excited that the groups have been very powerful. The power of the group is not only just the delivery of the information, but also, as I said, it's community. It's having people who get it, and somebody will share a story and other parents are crying in the group because finally someone understands and no one's sitting there judging you for your child acting a certain way or not acting a certain way or how you responded. And we're truly in it together. So that is the power of the group.
You and I are on totally the same page about that, about community, about anti-isolation. I feel like especially these parents, they just feel so isolated.
Yeah.
And
parenting
alone.
Is hard, man. It's hard
so
when
hard.
you have a neurotypical kid. It's extra hard when you have lots of spices in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Brett, so much for spending this time with us today. I loved our conversation. And I know I took away some pieces that are reminders for me, especially around the detective work, right? I am not always great at noticing and intervening early on because it can feel like it goes so fast.
Yes. If it feels like it goes 0 to 60, we just missed the 1 to 59. But it's okay. Right. All is not lost. It's fine. It just gives us, it's another data point, guys. It's just a data point. Thank you, Casey, for that. It's just a data point.
100%. Okay. I also just love your style. It's so normalizing. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And I know we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thanks for being here. If this episode hit home for you, share it with someone else who may need to hear it. And come find the rest of the conversation. All of my links are in my Linktree / Rhonda Essling ADHD coach. I'll see you next time.